Alright, we're going to talk about the Pythagorean theorem and the Pythagorean identities. So first, if you think about the Pythagorean theorem, if you have a right triangle, you know that you have side squared plus side squared equals hypotenuse squared. So if we call these sides A and B and the hypotenuse C, that's where A squared plus B squared equals C squared comes from. So working with the Pythagorean theorem, we're going to look at how to get the Pythagorean identities. Okay, so if you think about your trig, so we'll say opposite the angle. This right here is opposite the angle. And this is adjacent. It's beside of the angle, so this is known as adjacent. And this is across from the 90, so this side is known as your hypotenuse. Okay, so knowing the different sides is important. And then we take the Pythagorean theorem here and we say a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So how can we change that to the Pythagorean identities? Well, I can divide by anything I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is just divide everything divide everything by c squared. It's an equation. As long as I do the same thing on both sides, then that's okay. So what I can do is say, okay, now I've got a over c squared, and I've got b over c squared. So all I'm doing is factoring the squared term out. And then anything divided by itself is just 1. Okay? So now we have a over c, opposite over hypotenuse, is going to be our sine. So we can say sine squared theta plus, and we've got b, our adjacent, over our hypotenuse, which is our cosine. Still have the squared, equals 1. Okay, so that's our first Pythagorean identity. That's important to know. Now if we go back to the same thing, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and this time we divide by a squared all the way across, that's going to give us another identity. So we'll get 1 plus tangent squared theta equals secant squared theta. So this is our second Pythagorean identity. And then if we divide the whole thing by b squared instead of c squared or a squared, if we divide each term by b squared and then use our trig identities to figure out which one it is, we'll get our third trig identity, which is 1 plus cosine squared theta equals cosecant squared theta. Okay, so these are very important. These are known as your Pythagorean identities. So I would write these down. We're going to use these to do some problems.